Watch a child jump into a puddle. It doesn't matter to them that their shoes will get soaked. It doesn't matter that in an hour their parents will be annoyed. They're not thinking about whether their jacket will get dirty and someone will ask about it at work tomorrow. Because they don't have a job. No mortgage, no deadlines, no bank account that needs topping up. They see a puddle, they jump. An adult walks past the same puddle, stepping carefully around the edge, because they're late for a meeting, because there's a phone worth a month's salary in their pocket, because somewhere inside them, a habit took root long ago. Don't do what you want. Do what you have to. And the question arises that sounds naive, but really isn't simple at all. Which one of them is actually more free? At first glance, it's obviously the child. No obligations, no one demands an account of how their day was spent. They don't have to earn the right to rest. Rest is the default. They can spend hours watching an ant crawl across the pavement, and no one calls that wasted time. An adult can't do that. Hanging over them is an invisible meter measuring every minute in terms of usefulness. A child lives in the present in a way adults have forgotten how to. They don't postpone joy until the weekend. They don't tell themselves, I'll finish this, then I'll be happy. Joy happens right now, for any reason at all. A found pebble, a game invented out of nothing, a funny word. The philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau, writing about education in his treatise Émile, or On Education, argued that nature wants children to be children before they become adults, and that forcing this process ruins both childhood and adulthood in the process. Let childhood ripen in children, he insisted. Don't rush it. But this is where the other side of the question begins. Because a child chooses almost nothing that makes up their day. What time they go to bed isn't their decision. What they eat isn't their decision. What school they attend, who they are allowed to be friends with within a set schedule, what they wear, where they'll spend the summer. All of this is decided by adults, often without even asking their opinion. A child is physically, legally, and financially dependent on other people, completely. They can't leave the house if things get bad. They can't refuse a demand they consider unfair. The most they have is crying or silence. Their body belongs to them, but the schedule of that body belongs to someone else. An adult, for all the weight of their obligations, has something a child doesn't have at all: the right to choose. A limited, often bad choice, but a choice. An adult can change jobs, can move to another city, can decide that today they simply won't go to that meeting, even if there are consequences. They have the ability to say no and carry the responsibility for it themselves. A child has almost none of that. Someone else carries the responsibility, which means someone else also makes the decision. The psychologist Jean Piaget, studying how children's thinking develops, observed that young children perceive adult rules not as something open to discussion, but as something handed down, almost like laws of nature. For a long time, a child doesn't know how to question authority. They simply believe in it because there's no alternative. That isn't freedom. It's closer to total dissolution into someone else's will, which happens, fortunately in most cases, to be well-meaning. There is another layer to this that rarely gets discussed. A child is free from anxiety about the future, but only because they don't yet have a real sense of the future as something concrete. They are not afraid of old age because they don't understand what it is. They are not afraid of losing a job because they don't know what a job is. Their calm isn't a fear that's been overcome. It's a fear that hasn't arrived yet. It's the difference between someone who isn't afraid of the dark because they've never been in it and someone who stopped being afraid of the dark after walking through it. Both look equally calm from the outside. Inside, they're two entirely different states. And still, it would be dishonest to say that childhood is only dependence and submission. There's one area where a child is genuinely freer than any adult: imagination. An adult picks up a stick and sees a stick. A child picks up that same stick and it becomes a sword, a microphone, a magic wand, a fishing rod. within a single hour it can be a dozen different things. The psychoanalyst Donald Winnicott called this capacity play in transitional space, a territory between the inner world and external reality, where a child isn't yet required to decide what's real and what's pretend. Adults lose access to this space almost entirely.
We call it growing up, but in essence, it's the slow closing of an entire dimension of freedom. The freedom to see the world not as it is, but as it could be imagined. So, what are we actually looking at here? Not one kind of freedom, but at least two that barely overlap. A child is free from the weight of adult obligations, from accumulated grief, from the habit of constantly weighing consequences. But they are unfree in the thing that matters most, the right to determine their own life. An adult is free in exactly that right, and pays its full price at the same time. Anxiety, responsibility, exhaustion, the fear of getting it wrong. It turns out we always pay for one freedom with another. Childhood trades away autonomy in exchange for carefreeness. Adulthood trades away carefreeness in exchange for autonomy. Neither exchange is a better deal than the other. They are simply different currencies. Maybe that's why adults so often look wistfully at children playing in a puddle. Not because they want to have zero responsibility again, but because somewhere deep down they remember that state, when the world didn't yet demand explanations. It simply was. And the one thing truly missing from that picture isn't the freedom to choose. It's the freedom from having to choose at all. The child in the puddle isn't more free than the adult, and they're not less free either. They're free differently. And perhaps the only real question is which of these two freedoms we would choose if we were ever actually given the choice.